Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Name the dog, Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where three geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is a man who's drinking a root beer and another man who's drinking a regular beer. It's Justin and Frank. How are you today? It was really hard to include both of you in the intro. That was so hard. Over 500 episodes of just two people and guest. It was so hard to actually just mush you in to the host portion. You've been on so much. You're just like, you know, it's not even just guest star anymore. It's recurring guest star.
Yeah.
You know, so like next season you're a series regular. That's like how like, you know, series regular without a full episode count. You know, that's like what it feels like now.
Sure. You know, there's been a lot of great things that have happened to me today. I got my Deadpool and Wolverine socks. I got my Star Wars Outlaws. I had a bunch of stuff that's been fantastic happen to me today. But what Tim Gannon just said made my day. That is the best thing that has happened to me all day. So thank you very much for including me always. And I love talking to you two geeks.
We love having you.
Every time.
Justin Vactor, tell us where people can find you at the top of the episode in case they are semi-familiar with you already.
Yes. If you are a YouTuber and you enjoy YouTube, I am on there talking about Star Wars, funnily enough, at Trust in the Force. And I'm also talking about comic books at This Comic Cooks.
Very good. Sizzles. All right. Well, anyway, we're all here. And Frank, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a Founders All Day IPA, a session IPA that is citrusy, crisp, and refreshing. That's how they describe themselves, and I must agree with that. Yeah, it's a very nice, like very sessionable, very light and easygoing. You know, the can shows like an old station wagon down at the lake with a canoe on top of it, and that's what it tastes like. It tastes like a nice day down by the lake in New England. Founders.
That's what it tastes like. It tastes like an 80s Volvo wagon.
Yes. The wood panel siding, the whole.
It tastes like a woody. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Very good. That's what they're called. That's not like a wood panel siding car. There's a woody. Yeah.
Other things call that too. Anyway, that's the from the Founders.
The lovable character from Toy Story. Get out of here, both of you.
It'll give you a buzz. That Woody will give you a buzz.
I see what you did there.
That was good.
Nice.
That's why we're here today.
Yeah,
Frank, write that down. Episode title early.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Vactor, what are you having today?
I'm having my Old Faithful. I remembered this time to get some Diet A&W root beer, which is my favorite root beer in the world. I think I've talked about it before on this episode. I love root beer in all its shapes and sizes, but A&W, there's just something about that flavor. It's like that secret recipe that's locked away in the Coke vault. A&W is my root beer of choice. So that's what I'm having. And I'm trying to lose some weight, so I'm having Diet.
Very good. Very good. I am getting over a touch of a sickness, and so I'm having some tea. I'm having Yogi tea for those of you interested in what kind of tea I'm actually drinking, because apparently, I don't know if you guys knew this, that most tea bags have microplastics, are made from microplastics, and so Yogi tea is one of the only ones out there that is actually like safe to drink without getting without getting microplastics in you. And so I'm trying to remember what this one is called because, of course, I don't have the tea bag in front of me, but it is delicious, and that's why I'm trying to remember. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to use my one lookup just for this. Yeah, because it's not just green tea, friends. I got it.
I'm going to have
the
to
black,
get
the
that.
green, the oolong.
It is the honey lavender stress relief tea.
Ooh.
I was not. That was not even on my radar. So
Yeah,
that would
I
be
know.
A very long
Yeah,
time
so
to get
yeah,
that.
the thing with Yogi tea is that like if you're like, oh, I could really go for an Earl Grey, they're like, sorry, we can't help you.
Right.
Like we're all like, would you like one like for your throat because we can do that, or would you like one for vitality or whatever because we can do that, and like, but just
would you like one for if a Star Wars show you like gets canceled?
that's why I'm drinking the stress relief. That's part of the reason. I mean, it was a tough week, which is really the reason for the stress relief. But I'm drinking it because we're talking about the Acolyte and its cancellation. We all talked about the Acolyte together many times already, and then they were like, and then Disney was like, we're not gonna go with that anymore, even though we put a lot of effort into the surrounding. High Republic. This was supposed to be like the culmination of the High Republic that started with books, the first one by Charles Soule, Light of the Jedi, and then, and comics and probably other things, Young Jedi Adventures and all this other stuff, and it was leading to the Acolyte. Not that it wasn't going to keep going, but here it is, and there's like at Comic-Con they were like, here are these books that are coming out about the Acolyte, about, like all these other side characters and whatever else. And then, bam, sorry, we're not doing the show anymore. Wild. I've heard tell,
sir.
as it's,
I don't like it.
No, I've heard tell as it's gone that it basically, it was a late game decision because they were already assembled. They already had a writer's room. They were assembling directors. And so like they were moving ahead with season 2. And all of a sudden, it was like, well, we just didn't have enough viewers. And so it feels like it wasn't necessarily a Lucasfilm decision to me. It feels like it was a Bob Iger decision. Like, he's working real hard to save money across the board, across all of Disney. And I mean, it's like come out as well known now that streaming is not a good platform to make money. It's just not. And so I just don't think it drew enough viewers for it to be worth it for them. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. It's so disappointing that like, it's moments like this where it's like, oh, it sucks that like companies that need to turn a profit are like in charge of making these things that we love, because it's like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, of course, they have to make money, and if they don't think it's going to make money, they're not going to make more of it. But at the same time, it's like, but I liked that thing. I wanted,
and I think that's more of an indictment on streaming, where streaming television is these days, and where it used to be, the old cable model, the old TV model. I think I'm starting, and this was a huge blow to me, I think I'm starting to fall on the side of streaming may have been a mistake. I love the convenience of streaming, which everybody does. That's the main draw of streaming. But it's starting to get to a point where, number one, there's all these bundles that we thought we were getting rid of with, we're cutting the cord. There's no more cable that service that we're subscribing to for 200 channels. Now it's like, okay, well, we're going to nickel and dime you. Oh, you want Disney? You want HBO? You want Paramount? You want Hulu? Like all these things. And it's each year they're all getting more and more expensive. So now it's like, well, I might as well just pay for cable. I'm getting all of the same stuff, but not being nickeled and dimed because I want everything. I don't just want Disney or just Apple.
Yes and no, that like you're not necessarily getting the same stuff, because like if I just got cable, I really can't go back and choose anything that I want to watch out of like the hundreds of options available on each streaming service at any time I want to watch it. Like, yeah, cable does have on demand for some things, but I'm basically paying for what cable is offering at that present time. And I do find there actually still is a very clear like dip in the quality of a cable program and a streaming program. Like I'm not going to be able to watch Game of Thrones. Well, not Game of Thrones is a bad example, actually, but like Basically, that's the only one. Like that's like anything else is like they spend more money is spent on a streaming service show, and so generally speaking, the quality of what I'm watching is better. If I wanted to watch Law and Order or Love Island or whatever, then sure, then I could absolutely just stick with cable. But I don't want to watch those.
What you hit on right there, I think, is so like Vactor. You said like maybe streaming was a mistake. Maybe so. I think maybe trying to go into streaming at the prestige level that they were going in, and like everything having to be record-breaking budget, like everyone trying to outspend each other in the service of getting subscribers, and then realizing, no matter how many subscribers we get, advertising is still more lucrative than subscription fees.
Right.
So that's why they're going to start nickeling and diming. It's like, well, this is not giving us enough, so we got to squeeze more out of you to make it worth it. But they're spending so much on the content and like at like a sort of like weird, like rubbing it in each other's faces kind of weird way.
Right.
That I feel like if they had gone for something, I'm not talking like as low budget as like a you know, I don't know, a 3-camera sitcom on cable, but like somewhere in the middle, you know, there's like an ABC primetime drama budget that would be just fine for a lot of things, for a lot of the stories that they want to tell, and they probably, I don't know that they could make it work there, but it wouldn't be throwing so much money in the hole that now it's like a disaster for all of these companies that need to like protect, like take Willow off the service and pretend it never happened so they can get the tax cut. Like, you know what I mean? Like that stuff wouldn't be happening quite as much. Or maybe this show getting canceled wouldn't happen quite as much if they hadn't invested so much in it that like to get anything back is almost impossible with the model they've chosen.
And I feel the same way with the current state of Hollywood. I feel it's moved towards the big budget blockbuster, and you can't take chances because there's so much money at risk of, okay, this movie costs so much, we have to hit every demographic. Like this has to be a hit. If it's not a hit the first week, if it's not a hit the first weekend, it's done. All right,
it's doomed.
That's how I feel with these streaming shows now, where The Acolyte should have been given more room to breathe. It should have been given more episodes. Cutting it off at 8, to me, we talked about this when we reviewed it, I am now looking back on that and saying, what was my time well spent? Was it worth it? And I'm starting to lean towards, I don't know if that story that they told was worth it in that form if it had gotten more episodes, if it had gotten more development of where the stories were going. I could have looked back and said, season 1 started out slow, but look at Picard. That's a great example. Season 1 of Picard, I would not have said it, or if you cut it off at season 1, that wasn't worth my time. But when I got to season 3, yes, this is what I wanted. This Picard, like that was worth it to get to season 3. With The Acolyte, it's like, and I told you on the episode where we reviewed The Acolyte, Ahsoka felt the same way to me. Knowing that we are getting a second season of Ahsoka, I have a lot less anxiety, and I'm like, okay, I'm more forgiving of that first season because I'm like, there's more coming. Now that The Acolyte, I know that's it. There was 8. Yeah, there was flourishes and there was things that I liked about it, but overall, what was the point to me? Like, I wish I had gotten a better statement on what was this show, what were they trying to tell, because there were so many things that, this is from the Sith perspective, this is the High Republic era, all these things that I felt like it was trying to be, but then at the end of the day, I don't think it was. I don't think we saw the reason for that being set in the High Republic was what? Like, everything felt like prequel era to me in that show.
With a different color palette.
It was, they had white robes and they had gold tips on the Jedi Temple. Everything else, you could have told me that was around episode 1, and I would have been like, that sounds about right.
It's true. You could have said it was 5 years before, right? And you'd believe it. Yeah.
So setting it in the High Republic and making it feel like, this is something new. It's not the Skywalkers and all this stuff. It felt like it was a thought that didn't have, or it was a sentence that didn't have a period on it. It didn't have something to say, okay, this was the end. I felt like it's leaving it on a comma, leaving it on a cliffhanger. So that was my ultimate disappointment of them not continuing it.
I'm so with you. Like it really did feel like it was half the story, and we were going to come back for the second half of it.
Right,
but
which makes sense because it was supposed to be the first season of
exactly.
arguably
It was supposed to be the
2,
first
3,
of
4
two,
seasons, right?
Right, and so now it's just it's disappointing. It's a bummer that we don't get the resolution of it. So now it's like, okay, there were 8 episodes, a quarter of them were flashback. 25%, fully 25% of this series now was flashback, and they wasted Plagueis on this show that got canceled. Like, and that's to me that might be the bigger bummer. That like this was clearly supposed to shed some light on Anakin and all of that, where he comes from, and now I'm sure the story will be told somewhere, somehow. I gotta think there's going to be a season 2 comic, whether they call it season 2 or not.
I think you're right. Because if anything, Lucasfilm is really good at like not forgetting what it has made, even if it's not great. It will still incorporate it somehow. Like we can all agree that Rise of Skywalker was not great, but they didn't back down from it. They like worked really hard to make it better in retrospect. And I think even Lucas did that with some of the prequels, the prequel stuff. Like they just work, you work it in until it all makes sense, and it's still good. I did see a tweet. It might have been in our chat group. I can't remember. Where it was like, if this was George Lucas, he just would have been like, "Well, that's fine. I'm going to make a second season anyway."
Yes,
yeah.
And that's the thing about Lucasfilm when it was owned by him. Like he was literally I think he was the sole proprietor. Maybe there were other shareholders, but like he was in control in any way. Like he was the buck stopped with him, so he could just decide like, sure, I'll throw another couple $100 million after just to finish the story out. Why not? You could just make that decision.
It doesn't feel like there's now. I know Kathleen Kennedy is the one that most people use as a figurehead. Oh, yeah. Disney sucks because of Kathleen Kennedy, which I want to get to that too. The trolls, the whole troll side of this, but they don't feel like they have somebody who's steering the ship as far as TV goes. I think a lot of the video games, comic books, novels, that stuff is all great. But when I'm looking back on television right now, Andor is the only one I can tell you is 5 out of 5. You have to see it. This is what Star Wars television can be. Everything else, it's like, there's a couple good episodes of Obi-Wan. There's a little bit of Ahsoka. Acolyte has some stuff, but
there's Mando doesn't do it for you?
Oh, Mando season... I would say Mando season 1 and 2 also, I would put right under Andor. Those 2 shows... Book of Boba Fett, I would put. I only like the Mando part of Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
So when you look at all these things together, it's like 4 years now. When did Disney Plus start? 2019. It was before COVID.
Yeah, it must have been
2019. It's like you look back on it, and what is the legacy of Star Wars television at this point? I think the MCU is also in a similar place of where are they? Where are they going? What is an MCU show right now versus what is a Star Wars show right now? We have Skeleton Crew coming at the end of the year, but I don't know if I feel confident because I feel like maybe they won't even give it a chance because look what they just did to Acolyte. They won't even give it a chance to tell a full thought, like have a full...
I did see something about the difference between like Andor and this will tie into the trolls. The difference between Andor and the Acolyte is that Andor also didn't start with huge numbers, but because it was well reviewed and had good word of mouth, the numbers grew consecutively as the show went on. Whereas the Acolyte, it actually continued to dip every week, is what they say, and I think a lot of that has to do with trolls. Some of it has to do, let's be honest, with the quality of the writing. Because, some of it was clunky. We had talked about maybe there was a better way to structure the show than they had given. I think it'd probably work better as a 2.5 hour movie than as a show. Yeah. Like the way everything is kind of like segmented out, it would have been a fine movie. And that actually might be something that they should look into. Like, if you really wanted to, like, I would love it if they just gave us a second, if they gave us a movie to wrap this up, or two movies.
I'd be down with like some miniseries, some like 3 or 4 episode, like if 2.5 hours isn't enough for you to do it, like, okay, have 3 hours, have 4 hours, like, and do 1 hour each, like, but like you don't need to expand it all the way to 8 and have all this sort of filler and unnecessary mystery. You know what I mean?
Part of that is the streaming model that they're trapped in, especially now that there are ads. So, like, if, like, people come for one movie, that's only one ad time.
Yes.
You know, or even 3 episodes or whatever. So, yeah, but you can't have both, right? Because
that's it. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I'm saying about was streaming a mistake, because it feels like it's not being driven by the creative, okay, let's tell the best story. It's being driven by, okay, how do we make the most money? And that's where I'm starting to feel like I've had the wool pull over my eyes, because I know it's always, this is about money. This is not a nonprofit. You know, these organizations are in it to make money. But at the same time, I don't feel like I don't know about the stuff that's going on with Warner Brothers and Max. But anyways, I don't feel like other companies are to the point of they're going to cut off, you know, the creative at their feet and not give them a full storytelling chance. And they do seem to be giving Favreau and Filoni, they seem to be giving them with their Mandoverse and this movie, Mando and Grogu. We'll see how that turns out. But it seems like they're giving them the space and the time, 3 seasons of Mando and a movie.
I think the numbers and the merchandising have.
Oh, yeah.
Have, like,
which I just don't like the amount of hate that the Acolyte got. You would think it was the worst show of all time. I just don't understand the level of the pushback that I saw on my YouTube channel. Anytime I just made a video talking about it, 90% of the comments and the replies to me was, I hate Disney. Disney Star Wars is not Star Wars. I hate Kathleen Kennedy, and it's too woke. You know, all of these things. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in, you didn't like the story of it. You didn't like what we talked about, the formatting of it. Frank, that was a great point about the flashbacks. Yeah, out of 8 episodes, and you're going to 25% is a flashback to the story we already saw, and you're not giving us. They kind of had promised a Rashomon, like, oh, okay, you're going to see it from a different perspective. We're going to have this totally different like viewpoint of it. But when I saw it, it was like, well, that's kind of what I was thinking from the first time I saw that flashback, and then the third time I saw it, well, that wasn't too much different from the first one. Like, yeah, there was, you know, we saw things different, but did we need a whole, like, that formatting, that structure of a flashback? I would have preferred it in chronological order. Just tell me what happened.
But here's the double side of it, though, because we say, like, it's not being run by creatives, but then, like, you have, like, this was the creative decision that was made, and we say, that was a bad creative decision. You know, so it's like a really tough, like, it's a really tough thing to say, like, well, you could make it a little better, and that becomes movie by committee, see Rise of Skywalker. Or you could say, let the creative do their thing, and you get The Acolyte or Last Jedi.
Well, maybe that's okay. I like Leslie Headland's work a lot, but maybe Leslie Headland was not the right creative for this show.
It's very possible.
I think that might be. They have been, Lucasfilm, pretty much since Disney took over, have been trying to, okay, let's get the, like, sort of the young, sort of current, like, you know, hot creators. And they've gone through, think about all the people who, like, it's been announced they're working on a show or a movie, and then it gets canceled. Like, so many of these, like you know, the Game of Thrones guys, and, you know, so many sort of, like, people get brought in, Colin Trevorrow, like, and then it's just sort of like, you know, either their star flames out, or they can't come to a creative.
That's
agreement.
The MCU effect. That's let's announce our slate of movies,
right?
Because they're lined up, and yeah,
and it seems like they're doing a lot of like announcing projects to get people excited, and there's not a plan for those projects. Kind of like there wasn't a plan for the sequel trilogy, which again I enjoyed, but it doesn't really hang together. Let's admit, like as well as the other two trilogies do, because they were designed to be trilogies, and this was sort of made as it went along. And I think there's some of that effect is happening with the shows as well, where they bring in a creator, mostly based on like whatever they are currently known for. They're not always super seasoned creators. They're not always people who really have a Star Wars story to tell, but they bring them in by saying, do you want to tell X kind of story in the Star Wars universe, which again is not a bad thing in and of itself.
Right.
I think Tony Gilroy is a great example of somebody who is not a Star Wars fan who wants to tell this story.
Yes.
It happens to be in the Star Wars universe, and he threaded the needle, but I think they're trying to get others to thread the needle too, and they're not quite nailing it.
True, except that Leslie Headland is a self-proclaimed Star Wars fanatic. Like that, which
I
is
understand.
yeah.
I understand.
She's
No,
an Old Republic
I'm not
fan.
saying that she's
That's
not
her.
a Star Wars fan.
Her thing is the Old Republic. That's like
Right.
that's what she said.
Mhm.
That's where her real
But-
Star
and that's
Wars
why
fandom is.
I would have liked to at least give her 2 seasons to
Yeah.
flesh out, her. I mean, I thought 8 was too short for the first season. I would have liked to have seen 10 or 12, extend it out a little bit, and give us more of a full thought, because I also felt like, even though it had been like a couple years since they went to Star Wars Celebration and they were talking about it.
Yep.
It had been on the shelf, I think, for a little bit, and Skeleton Crew is the same way. I wonder, did they have enough time to give Leslie Headland a full thing, or you got to turn it in now. You got to turn it in your draft, and we got to cut this off. I feel like I wish we were flies on the wall and we could really hear the behind the scenes. But
I hope someone
we're
writes
just
a book.
speculating.
I hope someone
yeah.
writes a book,
Yeah.
right? And like that's usually how these things come out. Is someone writes a book about either a journalist goes in and interviews other people involved, or someone writes a tell-all who was involved in it, and that's usually how you find out 5 or 10 years later. And I'm super curious. I'm super curious.
There's a really good book written by Joanna Robinson about the MCU, and it talks about how they didn't have, when they first came out with Disney Plus, and there's a bunch of stuff that's interviews and stuff that's come out about Disney Plus where it was, okay, we just need content. So it was just throwing whatever you can against the wall until it sticks. And a lot of the television side, Marvel was like, we don't need a showrunner. We can just make them like we make our movies, and we can cut them up into episodes. Like they were just filming movies and cutting them up into episodes. And after, I don't know which one they came to the conclusion of, but basically Daredevil Born Again, which is coming out, they said, let's actually get a showrunner. Let's actually make it like a traditional TV show and not do that thing we were doing all along. I almost feel like Star Wars is in a similar place. Now, they haven't come out and said that, but even when I look at the way Obi-Wan was shot, the way Book of Boba Fett was filmed, like not the physical filming of it, but just the way it was formatted. And those didn't feel like complete thoughts to me. They felt like side things. They didn't feel like a full TV show. And now looking back on Acolyte, it's almost like the same thing of, this didn't feel like a full TV show. And I felt like if you saw Seinfeld season 1 and you just cut it off, that would have been a completely different TV show than what it grew into 9 seasons later.
The Office.
You'd say it was a terrible show.
Yeah,
if you only saw the first season.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
There's a lot of shows like that, and
but
totally. Those shows,
Friends,
also Friends is another one. Yeah, traditionally the first season is generally not the best one. But those are also cheap shows to make in comparison.
That's right. Yes,
and I think that is like I find there are a couple of different times in entertainment history where you can kind of pin where you're like, oh, this is where things changed, right?
Yeah.
Like you can go to 2008 and clearly see the delineation with The Dark Knight and Iron Man, and how they simultaneously saved comic book movies and destroyed cinema at the same time,
right?
Where everything like needed to either be interconnected or or dark and gritty and real and like this, and it kind of just like
mid-budget movies died in 2008. Basically,
I think so. Basically,
Yeah.
But then you go to the TV side, and even before you get to streaming, you have Game of Thrones, which was like prestige television formatting. And the first season is good. It's really good, even in comparison to the other seasons. It's still like every season is great, except for the last one. And I think that's something that everybody's chasing, but they're trying to chase all of these different things at the same time. So even when the creatives are allowed to be creative, they're still just trying to chase the thing that was created instead of like being original. I guess it's very hard to be original.
Yeah.
I like I said, it really feels like an indictment of where we are currently with streaming as a TV platform and where Star Wars is. Like, if you tell me right now, we only have Skeleton Crew announced for TV shows. After that,
Not
they haven't
true.
said anything.
Ahsoka is confirmed to have a second
season
season.
2, right. I feel like, where is it? Like, if I'm telling you the status quo of Star Wars TV right now, it feels unhealthy. It doesn't feel like they're in a good spot. And a lot of it just, I actually wrote an article at ScreenRant.com about the genius of Lucas was not only just his world building, his creativity, but also as an independent filmmaker, the ROI on his investment versus with these budgets inflating, and they're not keeping in mind, hey, we need to keep the cost in perspective of what are we making and how does that maximize? Like, did we need to spend that much money? And look at the outcome. Did it produce what we wanted to produce? I feel like they need to look at Lucas's blueprint that he had on those original movies. Now with the prequels, he obviously, kept going up and up and up, but with that original A New Hope, didn't know it was going to be a hit, didn't know it was going to be a cultural phenomenon, didn't know it was going to spawn all these things. And it came in like a, modest budget, and it was one of the biggest independent movies of all time. And I feel like there's lessons to be learned in streaming from that. But I also wanted to, Tim, you were pointing out the structure of the Acolyte, and you thought it would be better as a movie. There is a creator out there. His name is Kai Patterson, and he's done fan edits of Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, and he's made them better. He's made the pacing better. He's made the storylines fit together better. I'm really hoping he does an Acolyte. I haven't heard anything from him recently, but his stuff. Oh, he did a Book of Boba Fett. He did a great edit on Book of Boba Fett. All of these are really worth checking out if you're a Star Wars fan, just to see the possibilities of, if they just tweaked it a little bit. And in my mind, I'm thinking about Acolyte of if there was just not those pacing issues, those cutting off at the end, like every episode, it felt like, oh, that's it? That's the end? Like if it just felt like there was more room to breathe.
Honestly, I think you still would have had to have dealt with the trolls and the bad word of mouth,
Yeah,
even without the pacing issues. And I think that is really what did kill the show. Not necessarily in that like it was the only reason, but like bad word people, despite it not being incredibly accurate, Rotten Tomatoes is something that people check. And if they see that like, oh, critics love it, but people hate it, I'm not going to check it out.
And if you're like, even people you talk to are telling you, I didn't like it, like that carries a lot of weight too, right? Like the word of mouth in general was not great, and I think undeserved. We talked about that when we first reviewed the show, but deserved or not, it happened, and it had an impact.
Yeah,
I agree though. It's I think that even had that not happened, I do think the show still would have had its flaws. I still think, so I did watch the Kai's Obi-Wan edit, and I really enjoyed that. I didn't know that they had done the others, so that's interesting. I have to track those down.
Definitely worth it.
But I think even this show is still an incomplete thought, like you said. Even if you rearranged it, trimmed it up, made it more cohesive, I think it could be better. It probably could be told better than it was, but it's still going to be incomplete. Like it ends on a ...
Yeah,
which
you
is,
only have so much to work with. Yeah,
right. And,
exactly.
But I don't mind when a show ends on without wrapping up everything within one season if there's going to be another one, right? I don't care. If you wrap up at the end of every season, well, what a grand adventure, and the next time you're like, whoa, what a new adventure we're on. I don't really mind when the show keeps going in this style of formatting, right? In this in this style of storytelling. What I do mind is that there's some stuff that we've, as fans, have just been waiting to see for a long time. I was watching Phantom Menace recently, and Padme asks Anakin when she first meets him, she says, "How long you been here?" And he says, "Since I was very little, 3, I think." And all of a sudden I was like, well, Anakin hasn't been on Tatooine his whole life? He was sold to Gardula the Hutt maybe when he was 3. What was he doing before then?
Right.
Not being on Tatooine. Where was he? What was he doing? Where was Shmi? What was she up to then? She would know. You know what I mean? There are actual, real questions in there that I feel like we would have, come a little further into that. And I just, again, maybe we'll see it, maybe we won't. But I think I think the sins of the Acolyte were not as bad as the good things that I really enjoyed about it.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where the loss is for me. Vactor, you had mentioned the state of Star Wars TV and where it's at. I think I don't really mind that there's not tons coming and coming down the pipeline, because that means that they're really trying to assess maybe quality over quantity. And I know that the MCU is doing the same thing. They're, instead of we need content, Bob Iger was like, we're wasting money. Why don't you go back and make it worth watching, and then people will come, and then there will be money, which is what the company had done for years, and it had worked to their advantage. And now, they're kind of going back to that. And so you actually had sent this. There's, the kids show Young Jedi Adventures came out. Skeleton Crew's coming out in December. Andor's coming out sometime in 2025. We have the second season of Ahsoka in development. The Mandalorian and Grogu is coming out in 26. And then there are 4 films on the way. There's apparently Dawn of the Jedi with
that's the one. Yeah.
With what's his name?
Mangold.
Thank you.
Mangold.
With Mangold, there's the Dave Filoni film set in the New Republic, which I feel like is going to be the culmination of
yes,
all what they were doing, the Heir of the Empire, basically. New Jedi Order, the Rey movie, and there is allegedly still the Taika Waititi film, but they say he's still working on it. He's doing other things, but that feels completely it must be just completely disconnected, and they're just doing a fun story.
That's gonna get axed. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, that feels like Blade to me in terms of MCU.
Sure.
Oh yeah, that's still a thing. That's still in the background, but we've heard no updates. We've heard nothing. It's just tell us it's not gonna happen, guys. I don't want
out of its misery.
Yeah, I don't want to keep on.
And I truly don't mind if it doesn't happen.
So
they put that where
I'd be excited if it did, but it's fine if it doesn't.
I heard somebody else, maybe it was on Twitter, they were like, man, giving us Wesley Snipes and Deadpool and Wolverine was the worst thing you could have did for that Blade movie, because I want to see a Wesley Snipes movie.
Yeah.
And we had been so starved for Blade before that. We had been so many years. Now it's this kind of gives people a little bit of this quenching their thirst for Blade, giving them a little bit of that. So I thought that was kind of an interesting observation. But yeah, man, Star Wars and Marvel are in a very similar place, like you said, Tim, about cutting back the quantity and focusing on quality. And I'm for that idea. It's just, I don't want to wait. I want it now. I don't want to wait for the quality. So that's where I'm at in the position that I'm in right now. It's like this 2024 year was so sparse of, we got Deadpool and Wolverine. Did we get another one before that? I think that was the only Marvel movie, wasn't it? For this year?
No.
There's not going to be any more. So
wasn't the Marvels this year? Or was that last year?
I think that was at the end of last year.
Okay. So
just having the one, a lot of people be like, okay, that's enough. One is enough. To me, I'm like, more, like Kylo Ren, more. I'm expecting 2 or 3 Marvel movies at this point, but that's just me. I know I'm in the minority on that, but I just love, like, man, I wish Beyond the Spider-Verse had come out this year. I just love these things. And so next year, 2025, now that, I've had to wait this 2024, I feel like with all the James Gunn stuff is coming out, Fantastic Four, I feel like 2025 is going to be all right, let's get the quality out. We've been waiting for these things now. So with Star Wars, maybe once we get to the Filoni movies, maybe then it'll be like, oh yeah, they've gotten it under control now. They've gotten the quality back. I'm curious, are you guys excited about Skeleton Crew from that one trailer, or just from the premise of Skeleton Crew?
Not really, truthfully. Like, I'll watch it. Like, I'll give it a try. Like, it seems to be like an 80s kid movie, E.T. or The Goonies or whatever, in space, which is fine, but that's not like, it's not my demographic. Like, it's not, it's probably not meant for me. And so I'm not going to watch it with a like, ooh, like, what secrets of the Star Wars universe will we unravel here?
Right.
It might just be a good time for the family, which is great. I actually do appreciate that kind of quality television. I've been enjoying, not Time Masters. Oh my gosh.
Time Bandits.
Time Bandits. I've been enjoying Time Bandits for the same reason. I'm like, this is so like for the family, and it's just like, it's silly and fun and whatever, and I'll be okay for that. It's not going to blow the internet up, and I think, and I think if they know that themselves, it might be okay. But I kind of like just go back to original, like, Star Wars is for kids, like, like it's supposed to be for kids. And I think in some ways is where the Acolyte actually failed, where it like forgot that Star Wars is for kids. Like, that show's not for kids. I would never show that show to a child.
Right.
Like, it's like, it's violent and brutal and filled with the complex themes. And Star Wars is not really, I mean, it can be quite brutal in its own way, but it's not really complex. It's pretty good versus evil. And when it veers away from that, it actually just kind of loses the essence of what is really mystical and universal about Star Wars. So about Skeleton Crew, like, if it kind of strays back to like, it's just good versus evil, guys, like, it's actually comfort watching, then it'd probably be okay.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that it's going to be that sort of, feel good, family friendly kind of thing, because I think that's kind of what we need right now. I think that would be great. But I do agree that I think that the Filoni is the chief creative officer at Lucasfilm. Like, don't forget, like, aside from being a creator, he's also a high ranking executive there. Right. And so if most of his attention is over there on those films, and knowing what we know about what a great Star Wars creator he can be, I gotta think that, like, maybe what's happening on TV, like, he doesn't really care about, apart from the shows that he's directly involved in, and his attention is over there on the movies. And maybe, when they start coming out, we'll see, like, oh wow, yeah, these are great, and the shows that were being made at the same time are not so great because he wasn't as focused on them.
Right, or if they were already like so far into the process of being made by the time he was made chief creative officer, that doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure both of these shows were before he ranked up. Pretty sure. Okay.
That makes sense.
Not in maybe like, at least not in the filming, but in like the already assembled pre-production side of things, and so it's hard to steer a ship once it's already set sail, even in pre-production.
Right. Right.
So I don't know.
I'm at the point right now where I need hope. I need something.
A new hope?
Andor season 2 is the only thing that I'm really excited about. And the Mangold movie, like, I want to know the origins of the Jedi. I want to go back. Like, the Old Republic is the time period that I love. I really want to get something in that. And not, we're gonna do it in the High Republic, and then not be really in the
High Republic.
Right.
That one scene when the senator was like, "These are all the things that are wrong with the Jedi," in like 3 minutes or less. I was like, I want more of that. Like,
if that was the entire season, that would have been. I think people would have loved the Acolyte. Like, if it was just like, if that was the main drive, or if it actually was from a Sith perspective, which Leslie had in many interviews had said, "Oh, this is going to be a Sith perspective," and then what we got, I felt like, was Sith adjacent. It was like, "Oh yeah, they're over there," and like,
maybe
we only got
second
one
season would be Sith perspective.
Right?
Yeah, right.
I agree.
It's like you said before about the Seinfeld thing, right? Like, if you only saw one season, you think it would suck. Maybe it's like if you had seen 2 or 3 seasons, you'd be like, oh yeah, that show was from a Sith perspective. Like, season 1, not as much, but right. In general, it was.
You talk about Seinfeld because they are pretty awful people. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, but Frank, to your point, if they would, I mean, they announced at Comic-Con and they talked about a little bit, I think, at the D23 maybe. If there was more announcements about Acolyte Comics, and season 2 is going to be a comic book, or season 2 is going to be a novel, again, that would put me at less, I would have less anxiety, or less, I would feel more comfortable. Oh, okay, there is going to be a continuation, maybe not in this format, in the television medium, but over here in this medium. I want more stories with these characters because I like these characters. There wasn't, the characters were not the problem to me with the Acolyte. So getting more time with those characters, I think, would only benefit my experience. So yeah, give me an Acolyte comic. I know we got the Kelnaka one. Give me more in a forward motion, not in a backwards. All right, Kelnaka's spoilers, guys. Kelnaka's dead.
It is kind of weird that all the comics and novels that they announced, like, these are all the characters that died.
Yeah.
Let's make. I'm like, now if you wrote me a new book about Qui-Gon, I'd be like, I'm there. Right. But it was like, it's a character that I weirdly spent more time with in a 2-hour movie than in an 8-episode show.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I just wanted more time with these people, and if you hadn't done so many flashbacks, we could have spent more time with the stranger. We would have spent more time with May and Osha and learn more about their motivations and why they're doing these things. And then also the repercussions of their actions, instead of, okay, we're going to retell, like, we're taking so much time with retelling you and re-showing you, your overall time is dwindling. So you don't get to see what happened after as much of, okay, the Brendock thing, like, what happened, what was the ramifications of that directly with Soul, like directly with the people that were involved, and just give us more time instead of taking up so much time telling the same story over, or the same situation, showing us from different viewpoints. If you only have 8 episodes, maybe structure it a little bit differently, in that this is going to be the most efficient time to spend with each character, right? So I'm left with regrets after this season, and I really don't like that, because I liked my time spent with season 1. I liked my time with the characters, and we talked about this before, giving us martial arts in the Star Wars universe that I hadn't seen before. I want more of that. I wish we had gotten more with Trinity. Give us more with Carrie-Anne Moss and doing Matrix-style fights, wire work, and all of these things. I wish we had gotten more.
like you could have that again, though. I think that's what's, you know what I mean? Like, just because this show is done, that doesn't mean that, like, they won't take what worked and apply it somewhere else. I think we said that on the show the last time we talked about this.
They do.
Hope they do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I really don't think that, as much as I wanted to see it, I really don't think they're going to be like, well, we'll just never talk about Darth Plagueis ever again, you know, or whatever, because this show happened not to work. I don't think that's going to be the case, and so they'll just
have to
restructure it in a different way. Before we wrap up, I just want to say that Dawn of the Jedi movie isn't going to be Old Republic. Jedi are before the Old Republic. Old Republic already has like the Jedi established. Yes. This is like, we don't even have hyperspace yet. It's like that. Right. That far back.
Yes. Learning about hyperspace roots. Yeah.
Right.
I'm interested in that time period because we've never spent time in that era. So I'm really curious. That's why I'm
for that
so
one book.
Hyped on that.
Yeah. I do recommend reading Dawn of the Jedi if you haven't read it, because that's I would assume what they're kind of basing it off of. And so
before
it's not
hyperspace.
Yeah, it's before hyperspace.
Before Zephyr Cochrane, huh?
Before Zephyr.
I've heard some really good things about Dawn of the Jedi. I have not checked it out yet.
Yeah, it was good. All right, my friends. Frank, where can people find us?
Head on over to beerwithgeeks.com, where you can go to the guests tab and click on Vactor and see every episode Vactor has been on with us in one convenient place, and listen to them all, binge listen to them, then head on over to Vactor. Why don't you tell us where they can find you again one more time?
Yes. If you're so inclined, you can go to YouTube and search Trust in the Force, where I talk about Star Wars, or This Comic Cooks, where I talk about comic books. And I forgot to mention, if you're on any other platform, it's just Vactorverse. So TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, just Vactorverse.
And those links will be in the show notes, as will the Screen Rant article you mentioned.
Oh, thank you.
So head on over there to check all of those things out as well.
Very good. Well, friends, it's a pleasure talking to you, even if it's about something that bummed us out. It's always a good time talking to both of you. So, until next time, cheers.
Cheers.